This is the TB24 podcast. My first guest is my dad, Will Shouse. He's the coach of Asbury University. It's an NAIA. And yeah, let's just get started. So tell me your background a little bit.
Well, I grew up a huge sports fan. Our household, we watched all the UK games. We, anytime any sports was going on, it seemed like we were watching it. Me and my brother and my dad, and then of course my mom jumping in too as a great sports mom. Played sports all the way through. When I got to about middle school into high school, I had to choose. I didn't have to, but I know how my mind works and being able to focus on things. I chose to go with the sport I loved the most at the time, which was basketball. And it was also around that time that I figured out I probably wasn't good enough to play in the NBA, but I wanted basketball to be my career. And so there's a few different routes that you can go with that. And my route that I chose was coaching. And the good thing was I had a lot of good mentors and a lot of good coaches I played for. I was able to take a little bit from each one and use and turn it into my own style. So then I was able to play, and I wanted to play for as long as I could possibly play. I was able to have the opportunity to play at Asbury University, which is the school I'm coaching at, and played there for 4 years, had a career that I was very proud of. Even got to stay on as the assistant coach for 4 years after I graduated. From there, I got the head coaching job at Kentucky Christian University at the age of 26, which is a very young age to be a head coach. I wasn't as ready as I thought I was, but we did well. Did so well that once the job opened back up after 2 years at Kentucky Christian, at my alma mater, which is Asbury, I was able to take that, and I've been here ever since. So 12 years, and I feel like I just got started and excited every day and still learning and still wanting to be the best.
Growing up, what athletes inspired you? Like, it could be any sport.
Well, we loved them all. We loved all the sports. Starting out, I think it was kind of rite of passage. The earliest thing you could play was soccer, so I went through Little League Soccer, and then the next thing you could play was t-ball and baseball, played that, and then you had your basketball and even played football, took tennis lessons, did it all, and just loved to play. But it was the era that I was in was the Michael Jordan era. So during that time, Nike's big marketing campaign, Jordan, and Bo Jackson was huge. Bo was the first athlete that I can remember that could do it all, and he played professional baseball for the Royals and professional football for the Raiders. So he was one I really liked. I liked boxing too. I liked watching. It was during the Mike Tyson era. Watched that. Never got into boxing as far as me doing it, but loved that. So I grew up in a very fun era for sports.
What were your favorite teams of like any sport?
Huge UK fan. Growing up, Rex Chapman was a boyhood idol. He's a person that every Kentucky boy at the time wanted to be like, and so he, obviously UK was big. The Bulls during that era, we were blessed to have. We didn't have ESPN at the time, so it was tough to find highlights. But you got WGN and TNT at the time were the two, because we had a satellite dish at the time. And WGN had all the Chicago sports, so we got to see Michael Jordan play all of his home games that weren't on like NBC and things. So like during the week, we got to see the players during that era. Also the Cubs, we got to watch them. In Atlanta, we got to see the Hawks, so got to see Dominique Wilkins quite a bit, and the Braves as they were coming through and beginning their march through the 90s as a very good team.
Let me see here. I had typed down. Tell me some of your favorite moments playing basketball.
Playing basketball, the funny thing is some of them didn't come on the court necessarily, but it was a huge deal for me because we had a 7th grade and 8th grade team when I was in middle school, and they let so many 6th graders try out, and they only kept a few. And I remember coming out of the locker room after the cuts were made, and it was like one of the most exciting times of my life that I made the team as a 6th grader on the 7th grade team. And that kind of started the whole basketball thing for me, being a part of something and then working to get better the next year and things like that. So that was kind of the beginning, even though it was like, I was 12 years old, it still was a big moment for me. Being able to play college basketball was another one. But before that, we played in the state tournament in the Sweet 16 when I was a junior in high school, and that was a big, that was a big time for me. And then, I had some big games in college that I love to reminisce about and tell you about a lot.
Yeah. What are some of your favorite coaching moments?
Coaching moments, a lot of those come on, you have the big moments, the last second shots, the things like that, the beating good teams, but really the moments that I love come in practice and come like in small college basketball. You have to do so many little things like, we have to drive the vans, or we have to, we're here over the breaks when there's nobody on campus and we're feeding the team, and it's the personal moments you have with the players like that, the relationships that you build, and then seeing where they go from, being fathers, being husbands, and then a lot of them turn into coaching too. So those are my moments. I guess on the court moments during my second year at Asbury, we were trying to really create and get a lot of respect for the program, and Mount Vernon Nazarene was a program that's our level, that is a very prestigious program. They do very well now as well. We got invited to play in their homecoming, and I had a good team but a young team, so we got paid to play in their homecoming, which everybody knows, if you get paid to play in a game, you're not expected to win. Well, we ended up winning. I believe it was overtime, and Philip Morrison hit about a 25-footer right at the buzzer to win, and that was when I thought, we can really keep this thing going and be respectable ourselves. There's no reason we can't play with the big dogs, and that's a moment. I have a lot of other moments I could talk about, but that was kind of the beginning of saying, hey, we can do this.
Just some personal questions. What's your most embarrassing moment playing a sport?
Playing a sport, my most embarrassing moment. I do. There's a couple, and it's about baseball actually. I was taking practice swings, and I was blessed to have my dad as a coach, and that's somebody I really looked up to. And one of the reasons I coach now, he coached me in a lot of the sports I played. But he was, I was taking some practice swings in the circle there, in the getting ready to take the bat, and Dad had some last second instructions for me, and he was coaching third base. So he comes up getting ready to tell me something. Well, I didn't see him, and I took a full swing and just nailed my dad right in the arm. And he, of course, I know it had to hurt. And I was so upset about him I thought that I hurt him or broke his arm or whatever, that I started crying and I struck out because I couldn't get myself together enough. Another thing with baseball is we all wanted to do the Pete Rose slide. And Pete Rose would slide face first into things, wouldn't slide with his feet, would slide face first into the bases. We all wanted to do that. Well, I was stealing a base. I was going from first to second, and I slid, but I took off too early on my slide, and once I stopped, I was still probably 2 feet from second base, and they tagged me out. And I just remember being so embarrassed at the time. I'm sure there are others, but those are two that I was like, oh, maybe baseball wasn't for me.
What are some of the best sporting events that you've seen in person?
Seen in person, I got to see Mike Tyson fight one time in Louisville. That was a huge thing because of growing up watching him. I saw Michael Jordan play in an exhibition game in Louisville, and those are just epic times that you can say, hey, I saw that guy play. We saw LeBron James play up in Indiana. I went to the NBA Summer League one time and watched a lot of those guys. It was summer 2009, so I got to see a lot of those guys play there. And those are more events that you can say that you went to. As far as moments, I can't say that I've ever been to one that was like an epic moment. I just enjoy all of them that we go to.
Because you lived through both of their playing careers, break it down for me. Who do you think has had a better legacy, LeBron or Michael Jordan?
I don't know about the legacy because I'm emotionally tied to my era, even though I've seen LeBron. LeBron is amazing. But Jordan, to me, was the ultimate competitor. He would find ways to win. I'm not saying LeBron James won, but I think Jordan losing hurt so bad that he was going to make sure he never ever did it again, and he was going to do whatever he could to not lose anymore. And that, I mean, even things like how he handled his teammates, which sometimes wasn't looked at as great, but he was going to make sure he won. I don't know, and LeBron may have that, but it's not as visible to everybody. But if I just put it this way, if I'm drafting a team and starting with both of them in their primes, I'm going Jordan every time.
So, I mean, like you said, it's different times.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think the game has changed from, 90s and even
Mm-hmm.
early 2000s to now?
Well, it got to be a very physical game in the late 80s, early 90s, and teams were figuring out that in order to stop others, they could really ramp up their physical style, and the Pistons were big on that. And then the Pistons took it to then the mid 90s were like the Knicks. The Knicks, John Starks, Patrick Ewing, Charles Oakley, Anthony Mason. They really were roughing up opponents and winning in that way. Then the Heat, you had Alonzo Mourning kind of took that over and did that. So teams were winning by doing that, and the whole recipe for that was to rough up the other team's best player or just be so physical. I remember there being such a distinct difference between regular season and playoffs and how physical it was. Now you still see teams being physical, but the rules have changed too, and the game is more wide open. There were good three-point shooters back then, actually great three-point shooters, but now they take them in such volumes. The game has changed where if you can't shoot now, it's hard for you to be on the floor. The true big man really doesn't exist anymore. And through my era and then into now, you don't have the Akeem Olajuwons, the Patrick Ewings, the Shaqs. You don't have those, the Kareems. You don't have those guys anymore. And those guys were so talented and had such an impact to the game. Back then, if you didn't have somebody that you could throw the ball down to in the low post and be an impact player, you couldn't win. And even those Bulls teams, until they got, Bill Cartwright, Luke Longley, who aren't necessarily killers down there in the paint, it was somebody they could throw to. And then now you can win without a big man. You really just need a big man to be able to guard the other team's big guy, keep guys off the boards, and for rebounding, but you better be able to run and shoot a little bit. So it's changed in that. That's the biggest difference I've seen. And also, it's gone from, you are a definite point guard, two guard, small forward, power forward, or center. You were locked in that position to now it's positionless basketball, where you could be a man without a position and definitely survive. It used to be a big knock on guys in the draft that they were, they didn't have a position they were going to be able to play in the NBA. Well, now that doesn't matter.
You said a lot about shooting. Who do you think, it can be totally opinionated, who do you think are some of your favorite, shooters of all time?
Well, and mine doesn't necessarily go with, highest percentage. I just know when these guys got hot, it was tough for them to be guarded. And I don't want to leave somebody off, but when Rex Chapman would get hot, and if you looked at him later in his career, he turned into more of just a three-point shooter, and he would get hot. Of course, Reggie Miller during my time, Ray Allen, for Steph Curry now, Steve Kerr, even though he wasn't the main guy on the team. I said I wasn't going to say a percentage, but there was one year he shot over 50%. A couple years he shot over 50% from the three, and that's big. Underrated guys that are shooters. That I looked up to in my time. Tracy Murray used to play UCLA, big time shooter. He had 50 in a game one time. That was during one time I remember I picked up the newspaper, saw he had 50, and now you can see that game on YouTube. Fred Hoiberg was another big one, who's now coaching. I love John Starks. He was so streaky, but I loved when he would get hot too. Dennis Scott was a big time shooter. I know that I'm leaving some out, but I used to love to find me those shooters and just study them, watch them. Allen Houston, he was another one I really loved. So I could go on and on about shooters.
Yeah. Because you're a coach, you see a lot of the game. Do you think there should be any changes? Because there's a bunch of rule changes that are being, little ones are being changed every now and then. Do you think there should be any changes?
I wish in college basketball we'd have 6 fouls instead of 5. Just because, I don't know. I'm always watching fouls instead of being able to coach sometimes. Other than that, I really like the way it is right now. I do wish that the men's game, this is going to be a big statement, I wish they would go to quarters in the college just like the women have gone to quarters, because it's better for the flow of the game.
Mm-hmm.
For the women's game, once they go to 5 fouls in a quarter, they shoot the double bonus, and then it resets every quarter. And I just think that would help the game flow, because there's so many fouls. Sometimes you look up on the clock and you're in the bonus, in the double bonus, like 10 minutes left in the half, 12 minutes left in the half, and it really stops the flow. So that's one that I would probably change on the men's side.
I don't think I have anything more, but I mean, any closing stuff?
I'm interested in, one of my goals I would love to be able to do in the future. I want to be at Asbury, till I always say until they bury me behind the gym. But something that I think I could do with Asbury basketball is I would love to be a part of one of the USA basketball teams. It doesn't have to be the Olympic team. It can be one of the U18, U19 teams, just to be a part of something like that and stretch myself in that. So you never can quit having goals as a player or a coach.
Yeah.
And my goals, obviously, we want to make it to the national championship. We want to win the championship. But then on a personal side, that's something I would really like to be able to be a part of.
Any other goals?
I am looking forward to coaching you in college in a couple of years. Not that I think that we can win every game, but it'll just be some more time that I get to spend with you while we and I know you love the game just as much as I do, so we can love it together for the same team and go through those wars together.
Yep, there it is, the first podcast. Thank you for coming on.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
If you all like the podcast I just did with my dad and you want to see more of them, just like, comment, subscribe, and I'll try to get more guests on if you all like it. And yeah, peace.